Hi, I'm RC Jim, and yes, this beautiful FA-18 is what we're going to be working on today. You've already perhaps seen the unboxing video, and yeah, that was a lot of fun and very good. But today what we're doing is we're putting a Lemon RX stabilized receiver in the plane. I've been very reluctant to fly it. Hey, I'll be honest. You know, I'm more of the old style, slower plane flyer, you know, type guy. And I've been getting into some of the jets and faster things here lately. But this guy, my son bought for me, and I've been kind of scared to fly it. But I'm going to be seeing my son in a couple of weeks, and I can't see him without saying that I've flown the airplane. But I also don't want to see him and say, "Oh, Steve, I crashed the airplane," you know. So I really want a good quality, dependable, stabilized receiver in it that's going to really help me to be able to fly it and bring it back home all safe and sound. So that's what this is all about today. Okay, we've got our FA-18 here, Freewing FA-18, and I'm wanting to put a Lemon 7-channel receiver in here. Fortunately, this one has got a little control box sort of thing in there that does all of the flap sequencing and, well, the landing gear sequencing and the door cover. Well, the door covers mechanically get closed. But anyway, all I need is the throttle, the 3 main flight controls, gear, and flaps. So I need 6 channels. I got 7 channels of this. I got stabilization. Initially, I was looking at this and thinking, okay, I had the Spektrum receiver stuck to the side, and I can't put this on the side. It has to go flat. But then I realized, well, I can just simply Velcro it in underneath here. The only thing is that the cover, the cockpit thing here, that's about 32 millimeters height as compared to something much shorter over there. Okay, so this one comes all the way down to this level here. So I need to make sure that I'm down below that level for any wires and stuff that are hanging out. But that'll be okay. I'll make a little platform that comes down to that level with Velcro on it. Stick it in there. And all these wires and stuff, they'll come down to clear. That'll be fine. I can probably stick one antenna. So I'll have one tube across here, one tube down there. So I might run the second antenna tube down through the bottom, because I got one up at the top and then one at the bottom, that one horizontal, the other one vertical. Okay, so that's the plan. Okay, here we are on the workbench. So I mentioned I'm going to stick it under there. We need to get it below this level here. And by the way, apologies to you Navy guys for the Air Force mug. But anyway, the guy does have to have his cup of tea. So I've just got a couple of scrap pieces of balsa stuck together. Bit of Velcro hooks on there. There's a little bit of a taper after it starts going in there, so I've cut a bit of a taper on there. Slot is just because of the scrap of balsa that happened to have a slot in it. Doesn't make any difference for what we're doing here. We're going to stick it under there. I want it perpendicular, and I can probably eyeball it, but I'm thinking that if I use the square when I go to stick it in, I've got to get it the right way, that might be a good thing to do.
I did that only to have the thing fall off a little bit later. I guess I should have sanded up and roughed up the foam a little bit. But later on, you'll see me glue it on again.
Well, let's get our transmitter and receiver set up. So the first thing, we have to have a plane in the transmitter. And so I'll have a look and see what we got here. Okay, what we're going to do is copy a plane. And the idea is copy one as close as you can to what you've got. I've just acquired this transmitter not too long ago, so I don't have all my planes in here yet. But this Redtail P51, it's got flaps anyway. We'll just have to add the retracts. So I'm going to duplicate that model. Say yes. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to that model, Redtail P51. We're going to select it, and then we're going to get in there, and we're going to rename it. So this is a Freewing. Let's do lowercase. Nice having the type screen. Freewing FA-18. Okay. Okay, so that's good. So we put that in there. And I'll do the programming in there in a minute, but right now what I'm going to do is get the receiver ready to go. Okay, having got our basic plane set up in here, what we now need to do is to bind the receiver to the transmitter. So we go into the model settings, we come down to internal RF, and then go down there, make sure we got the DSM X2F, got enough channels, got a unique ID, and then what we're going to do is we're going to be binding it. Now we're going to want this away from the receiver when we do this, but what I'm going to do is when it comes time to bind it, I'm just going to touch on the, well, I'm going to get this in the bind mode, and then I'm going to touch on the bind button there, and then just wait, and that's going to be what binds it. So get the receiver a little ways away. We need to power up our, we got the transmitter out of the way. So now we need to power that up, and one easy way to do it is with a UBEC. This is just like an ESC with the battery elimination circuit minus the control for the motor. Okay, so they're quite inexpensive. You just plug it into your battery, and it allows you to easily power something up. We can use a bind plug and the bind port, or just simply use the bind button. And you'd probably recall that that B button is bind. The C is what we'll be using for setting the stabilization, and F is what we'll be using to set the failsafe mode. This connector up here will be where we plug in our sensor for the battery voltage. That would be for a satellite receiver, and of course a satellite receiver has nothing to do with satellites up in outer space. It's just talking about a place where you could have the antennas far away from the other electronic stuff and then bring it back and connect it to here. Okay, so I'm going to plug the power in, and then we're going to hit the bind button. Just hold it in until everything starts flashing. Okay, flashing rapidly. Then I hit bind on the transmitter. It does its little thing. I get a little green flash, and then I should get a red light. There we go. There's a red light. So that's now bound. Next thing to do is to make sure our failsafe is set up. So with a failsafe, the default is just simply no signal. So if the transmitter, something happens to the transmitter, and it's, well, for whatever reason, the receiver is not receiving a signal from the transmitter, then just stop sending signals to the servos, and they just simply stay where they last were. Okay. I feel a little bit more comfortable with having a user set setting. And with the user set setting, we'll do that here in a minute, but we're going to use this F button. And we are going to set the controls where we want them, and then if the receiver still has power and it's stopped receiving a signal from the transmitter, then it's going to move all of the servos to the positions where we had them last set. Okay, so in terms of where I want them, I'm going to, I guess flight mode doesn't really make any difference, but I'm going to have flight mode down. I'm going to have the stabilization off. I think I'll throw in a little bit of flaps just to help slow the thing down, perhaps. I suppose the gain doesn't make any difference, and whether it actually does anything with the gain, I don't know. But the key thing is I'm going to have the ailerons and the elevator neutral and the throttle down, and I'm going to give it just a slight bit of left rudder. And the thought with that is if I've lost the signal, perhaps if the plane turns a little bit, it might regain. Okay, so a little bit of left rudder, not a lot. I don't want to crash the thing. Okay, so I have everything set like that. I then hold down on the F button, and well, actually what I have to do is I have to unplug the power from here, and then when I plug this back in between 3 and 60 seconds, I need to to push down the F button, and I'll lift it up when I get a green light, okay? And I'll have to have the controls all in the right place. So 1001, 1002, 1003, safe there. We press down the F button. I've got a green light, I let it up. Okay, so I had just a little bit of left rudder in there, and I've got half flaps and neutral aileron and elevator, and that's where it's going to go if we lose power. And one good reason for having something in there that changes from the normal is that you'll want to test this. And so when you get this all hooked up in the plane and everything, what you'll want to do is have it powered up, then turn off the transmitter and see if the flaps come down a bit and the rudder goes over a tiny bit. That'll tell you that it's working. Okay, so we've got our fail-safe mode set up, and that's indicated by the green light up here. Now what we want to do is to tell this what kind of plane we've got. And in the instructions, you'll note here you've got a choice between a variety of things. But we just want C here, a normal wing and a normal tail, and that means we want R1 and R2. Now that's referring to red lights that are up there on the receiver. And the red lights are in here. So you've got a set of green lights and a set of red lights. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a bind plug. I'm going to power, and actually we don't need the transmitter for this. So we're going to get that out of the way, turned off. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a bind plug in channel 6, and channel 6 for a 7-channel receiver, and it would be channel 9 for a 10-channel receiver. But for this one, we're plugging into channel 6, and I'm going to hold down the C button while I put in the power, and then I'm going to get some flashing lights, and when they're flashing rapidly, I'm going to let off the C button, and then I'm going to get the red lights are going to go in a sequence. So first off, the R1 is going to flash, then the R2 is going to flash, then both the R1 and the R2 together are going to flash, and finally R3 is going to flash. So I'm going to wait until I get 1 and 2 flashing, because for the normal wing, normal tail, I want R1 and R2. So I'm going to wait until those two are flashing together, and then I'm going to double tap on C. Okay, so let's watch and see how that's done. Okay, so hold down on C. I put in the power. I've got the flashing happening, and there's 1, 2, 1 and 2. Okay, so now we got 1 and 2. Got the green light indicating that the fail-safe mode is set. I don't have a red light down here, which means it's not connected to the transmitter, and of course the transmitter is turned off, so that's why it's not connected. So before I go and put this into the plane, I want to make sure that this thing works. So I'm going to remove the bind plug, unpower the receiver. I'm just going to grab a servo. And the key thing is just that one of them works. So you could plug in servos to all the channels, but I'm just going to plug in aileron servo. Come on. Yeah. So third one down is aileron. 1, 2, 3. Third one down. Sometimes they don't appear to line up. They're sort of lined up with the bottom of the connector. But anyway, just making sure you have it in the right one. So we've got a servo connected there. I'm going to power up the transmitter.
Welcome to HTX.
Okay.
Mode 1. Throttle cut. Flaps up.
And in here, I'll be showing you this in a minute, but I've already got this plane set up with channel 7 being set up for the turning this stabilization mode on and off. So you need to have a channel 7 in there that's set up with a switch, and my switch is this SE over here. Okay, so that's already been done. Stabilization off is like that. So let's see, that's turned on, so I can now power this up. Okay, so now we see we've got a red light down here, which indicates it's linked up to the transmitter. We got the 2 red lights there, which indicate that it's in the stabilization mode for a normal wing, normal tail. And then we've got a green light here indicating that the fail-safe is on. So with it like that, first off, if I take my transmitter, got too many things here. Okay, if I take my transmitter and I, let's get this over here where you can see it. Okay, I move the aileron. Okay, I've got control on the aileron. Okay, next thing is I shake this a little bit. Let's hold the aileron steady, shake this a little bit, and the aileron's doing nothing. Now I flick on my stabilization, and I come over here, and I flick this back and forth, and look what's happening, you know. It's working that stabilization. So we'll be setting directions and things later, but right now I just want to know that the thing works. And so yeah, it makes sense that it's working because the red lights are on. If you didn't have red lights, if you only had green lights, you've done something wrong, speaking from experience. But anyway, we got 2 red lights there, and probably kind of hard for you to see in the video that they're red, but there's 2 red lights that are there, along with a green and a red down here. And that's indicating that it's all good. Okay, so the little UBIC is handy for something like that. So let's get our transmitter going again. Okay, so here we are, Freewing FA-18. That's the right model. So we want to go into the model settings. And we go across to the inputs. We will check these in due course. But starting out at 60%, we should be okay. We'll see how that's looking. Throttle, rudder, elevator, and flaps. Okay, so all of those should be okay. We're going to add landing gear, but we don't need that on this page. So here we will add landing gear. Oh, we do have landing gear. Okay, very good. Okay, so gear, just simple up and down, full, nothing fancy. SF, this one at the back. Yep, that's correct. Okay, so it's very simple when you can just copy a plane and just move it across. So let's get out of that. Okay, and we got channel 5 there too, so there's our landing gear. We got our flaps. Okay, and we got our stabilization and our gain. So stabilization, channel 7 is to turn it on and off. Channel 8 is our dial, S1 dial up at the top. Just to show you there, we've got source. It is there. I was blind. Okay, so with gain, We got S1, which is our dial up at the top as being the source for that. And nothing to do special with that. It should be operational in all flight modes. Nothing slowed or anything like that with it. So that's all good. And the switch for the S mode is just simply on or off. And switch E is what does that. So that's correct. That's the one that we want. So dead easy when you've already got one of these set up and you're just simply adding another one in. Okay, and that's all good. Okay, we might have some more things to do with sensors, but that's pretty good. So we've got Velcro on the back of our receiver. We've got our little platform in there to stick it in upside down. We'll be able to plug in all of our leads, and actually we can even keep the leads out of the way. We can keep the leads in the back because we can pull it out to put them all in and then stick it in and stick it on. So that's going to work out good. Okay, we're now ready to plug things in. Lemon is really good in that they tell you everything right on here as to where it all goes. Only exception being is channel 6 is just auxiliary 1. But that's what we'll be using for the flaps. 5, the G/S, that's for the gear. So anyway, number 1 is a second set of pins. Channel 7 is that first set. So it's channel 7 and also bind. But of course we're using channel 7 to turn on and off the stabilization. Throttle. There's throttle. Okay, I was beginning to wonder whether they had it separate as it's coming from the ESC. Okay, channel 1 is throttle. Okay, and that's on the second set of pins. Okay, so throttle, aileron is next. Keeping brown on the bottom. Okay, we make sure we got them all in nice and snug. Then we need our connector for the voltage sampling. So with Lemon you can either have a larger connector that you can use to measure actual current as well as voltage. This one just is voltage, but this is my preference, as I explained in a previous video. I try to avoid as much as possible anything that gets in the power system. You know, between the battery and the motor, the heavy set of cables going through there. I like to keep as little as possible between those two things, just due to the high current that's involved and potential for failure. Okay, so now we're going to work out our antenna placement. So, still is a bit of a mystery as to exactly what's underneath there. Have a look and see if we can see anything more. Okay, so we've got all the landing retract, the nose gear retract up there. This panel could come out, but I know that the ESC is farther back and all of the electronics are there. So I think I'm safe to drill a hole in here. We'll find out. Okay. We're going to do a couple of things here. We've got 2 antenna tubes to put in. One is going to go across here, so I need to just clear out just a little bit of that for that. And the other one is going to go down into here. Yeah, I don't really want to go over there. Want to leave as much room to be able to slide a battery back if I've got a heavy battery in there. I'll get it as far over this way as I can. That looks like that's pretty well spot on. Tiny bit tight perhaps. Get a hold of the very end of the drill to make it as long as I can so that I can get a bit of reach. I think what I'm going to do, I'll put it right there, and then I'll use I don't know if I skewer that size or not. I'm going to go on an angle just to get the hole in there, and I'll use something else to run it down. Okay. Well, I've got a barbecue skewer that I can stick part way in there, but it's a little bit too fat. And just looking at it, it's a little bit bigger than the tube. I could drill a hole a little bit bigger. Okay, we're going to go with a larger drill bit, but I don't like this wire sitting so close to where the drill bit is going in. I'm just going to just use some tape to keep it clear, and should it rub against it, it'll rub against the tape and not the wire. Okay. Okay. See what that does. Yeah, that'll do it. Okay, now what I need to do is work out how far I need to go. Yeah, okay. Let's mark this, say about there. And yeah, I think that'll be all right. Just a tiny bit. Oh, that went right through the bottom. Okay. Because I could have drilled through from the bottom, huh? Okay. Now, there's our antenna holder. Okay, and that stayed inside the plane. Okay, and then we want one across here. So I need to clear wires away. And we got a little Dremel. Okay, that's looking good. So I'll get our glue again. I think I'll use some greaseless paper to hold that in place. I think I'm going to use a different type of glue with this one. Want something that's has a little bit more filling capacity. Okay, I'm going to use this foam cure stuff, mainly because I can get it on my fingers without worrying about it, and it's a little bit more better as far as filling up a gap and adjusting things and stuff like that. I'm going to keep it away from the ends. I don't want to get glue into the ends of the thing. Okay, get it all the way to the end there. And this stuff will clean off the fingers pretty well. So I can sort of play around with it a little bit. Okay, it's going to take a while to dry. That's the downside of it. And just put a dab on this other one to keep it where it is. Okay, and we'll hold that in place. We'll be using a bit of tape on the end of that to hold the antenna in place. So I've moved that tube up a tiny bit. Plus it was sticking out through the bottom of the plane a little bit, which it doesn't really need to do. So that's a good position like that. And that should give us good diversity. So we have a horizontal antenna, and we've got a vertical antenna. This one is up on the top, that one's on the bottom. That one's more on that side. This one's a tiny bit more on this side. But anyway, it's about as good as of diversity as what we're going to get. So that should be good. This we will stick in upside down, like so, in underneath that. And I think we'll have room for the wires, and that'll keep all the wires out of the way of the battery. And that should give us a nice long distance to be able to move the battery fore and aft should we need to. So now we've got the receiver in place. It's stuck up on the Velcro, so we can pull it out if we need to. We've got our one antenna down in the tube there. We've just got the tape on the side here to hold it in place, keep it out of the way of the battery. The other antenna is coming up here through the tube. I've got this wire, or this tape here, to hold the wire in place, keep it from going in and out. And this one I've just got there to keep that tube held up in place while the glue dries. Okay, we've got our voltage thing here. So this just hooks into the balance connector to be a sensor for the battery voltage. And of course we've got our battery connector down here for the battery itself. Lots of room as far as moving it forward and backward. This is our proper battery for the plane. I do have a 4000 and a 6000 as well, but it's supposed to be 4500 to 5500, so that's right in the middle. Who knows, might end up using the other ones as well. Tempted to use the 4000 just to keep it nice and light. But anyway. Okay, so the voltage sensor goes in on the red lead on the balance connector, so that's sensing the voltage. And I don't know if I've balanced this yet with this, but this will go in here in some sort of position. And we're not terribly worried right now. Main thing we're doing is getting the controls set up. But that'll go in there, something like that. And then we'll hook up the power. Okay, so we'll get the transmitter going. And I'll set it just a little bit out of the way.
Flight mode 1. Pressure cut. Flaps up.
Okay, free wing. Okay, no props to worry about, but we will hold on to the jet just in case. Okay. Okay, with it plugged in, ailerons work and they're backwards. Elevator works and it's backwards. Rudder works and it's backwards. Throttle cut works.
Pressure active. 0.
Yeah, so
Pressure
throttle cut is working properly. Flaps work. They just, the down position is about right, but we don't have an up position. Okay, so we need to do the flaps adjustment. We need to reverse all of the basic channels. So to reverse the channels, we go into our model menu. Okay, so aileron, elevator, motor is channel 3, and rudder. So we want everything but channel 3. We want 1, 2, and 4 reversed. Okay, so we go into our output menu. 1 is already reversed, so we want to unreverse it. Okay, so that now works correctly. Oh. Okay, so that's good. Then 2, we want to edit that one, and that one we want to reverse. Okay, so elevator now works correctly. Okay, get out of that one, and then 4 was already reversed, so we unreverse it. Okay, back out of that. And now rudder, hang on, that's turning left. Huh. Okay, let's go into that one again. Edit, reverse. Okay, so I guess that rudder was okay. That is turning to the right. That's turning to the left. Nose wheel is, oh yeah, that's right. Turning to the right, turning to the left. Okay, those are correct. Okay, so now flaps. We got a little bit of game to play with the flaps. So we go back to our input menu here. And we got the flaps. Okay, with regard to the flaps, I've got them set up now. But as you can see here, we've got a bit of an offset in there. So essentially what I do is I play around with the offset to, let's see which way we go here. Okay, by going down with the offset, you can see the flaps went down a bit. That then allowed me to enter that and go up here to the weight and play around with the weight. And as I put the weight up, you know, it's going, the weight means farther direction each way, so I could bring it back up. But then that was taking me too far as the distance that I wanted to travel. Let's see, I only want like 60% or so on the weight. So putting in 60% on the weight, the flaps are down a little bit, as you can see there. So now I go to the offset, and I take the offset negative, and you can see the flaps are coming up as I go negative on the offset. Okay, and I can bring them back up to where they're even. So essentially, when I'm playing around with it, before I go altering the weight, I get the flaps down a bit so that I know I'm not damaging anything. So I use the offset to get them down. Then I can increase the weight if I think they're going too far. And of course I've got the slowdown already in here. That would be in the mixing. So I go down to the flaps, edit, and in this one I go down to the settings thing down here at the bottom. And then when I get to the bottom of this, you can see I got slow up and slow down. Having that set to begin with is good, because if it looks like it's going to start going too far, I just back off on the switch, you know, before it gets there, you know. So it's a good sort of thing. And then I also like to have it slow when it's actually being flown. So what we need to do now is look at the instruction manual, see what the throws are supposed to be, and then we'll adjust our flight modes accordingly. Well, we have our manual out, and on page 7 it tells us what the rates are supposed to be. So in the low rate, I'm supposed to have 26 millimeters up and down on the control. And it's on the inside. Top of it right now is on 85, and it moves up to 203. Okay, so 18 is what it's moving right now. It's supposed to be 26. Okay, so I need to move it another 5. So I go into the transmitter, to the model menu, go across to the inputs, and aileron is the first one for the low rate. So we go in there and we need to increase the weight.
So for each of the control surfaces, we went through, measured the deflections for both the low and the medium and the high rates, adjusted them according to the recommendations in the manual, and got it all set to go.
Okay, what we now want to do is to test our stabilization system. So we're going to fire up the transmitter. Okay, so our transmitter's fired up. I see we've got a Freewing FA-18, so that's this model. Now we need to power up the model. Everything is safe. I'm holding on to it. Okay, checking our controls. That's right direction, right direction. That's right. That's right. Okay. Throttle doesn't work with it disarmed. Does work with it armed. Disarmed again. Okay, we've got our gain here. For this exercise, we're going to turn our gain all the way up. We're going to turn on our stabilization. And then we're going to check to see which way the controls move when we move the plane. Now, essentially what you want to have happen is when you lift up on the end of the thing that moves it in that particular direction, you want it to come up. Because, you know, if the thing went up, you want it to go back down. And by the control going up, it's going to, you know, put it down. But you need to look at the initial movement, because when you finish the movement, the acceleration is going to be opposite to stop it. Okay? So as you're pulling up, you look to see what happens first, and what's happening first right now is that one is going down. So I need to reverse the ailerons. Okay, next thing, I have a look at the elevator. This is a little bit more difficult, especially with a model this size. That's going the correct direction. Okay. And then rudder. With this one, you'd normally like to tilt the plane sideways, but as I look at it, when I turn to the right, the rudder is going to the left, you know, to that side, which is turning it to the left, which is going to correct that movement to the right. Okay, and if I was holding the thing sideways like this and lifted up on the tail, then the rudder would be coming up, because it would be turning to the left, and the rudder would need to give right rudder. Okay, so rudder is correct. Elevator is correct. Aileron is opposite. So the way that we then do that is we have to get our receiver out. I guess I didn't need to tape in all of the antennas, did I? So anyway, we get our receiver out, and there's a way on the receiver to reverse it. So we'll do that next. Interestingly enough, as I've just pulled the receiver out, my little block of wood came out with it. Yeah, that glue that I used, you know, I don't know. You know, it just, I've had issues before, and I should know better. It's not good if, you know, you don't want that coming off when you're flying, especially if you got stabilization going. Okay, now for the stabilization, what we need to do, and you've got the directions in the detailed directions you get online, but we need to power up the receiver, and I guess to be safe we'll have the transmitter going. Okay, everything is in safe positions.
Flight mode 1, throttle cut, stabilize mode, flaps up.
Now we'll power up this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to hold down on the C button until we got the flashing happening, and then we're going to have green lights blinking, and they're going to blink in the order of the pots here: aileron, elevator, rudder. We want to reverse the aileron, and so what we're going to do is when we get the aileron button, we're going to tap the C button 2 times to set that. Okay, so we start out with the C. When they all start flashing, we release it. We got 1, so we hit it twice. Now we've got a solid green light, and that indicates that that one has been reversed. Okay, so we can have a look. Oh, turn the stabilization on.
Stabilize mode.
Yep, and now it's working in the correct direction. So that's all there was to it. Okay, now I've got to glue in my thing there, and just something about that foam up there just didn't like that particular glue that I used. So let's unpower this for a start. Okay, and turn off the transmitter. Okay, so I'm going to sand this part where the glue didn't stick to get rid of that glue. I mean, it stuck nicely onto the balsa. It's just it didn't stick very well onto the foam. I guess I could have tried sanding that foam a little bit under there. I can do that, but I'm going to use a different glue as well. So I'm going to sand off this glue. I'm going to sand that a little bit to get a better surface to glue onto, but I'm going to use a CA this time. I got thinking about this glue, and then I remembered I did use a CA on there because I had the greaseless paper in my hand and I sprayed with a kicker. Got on my hand. It's this one here that I use that glue that I don't particularly like. So my favorite glue for doing really solid glue jobs on foam is Gorilla Glue. Okay, it'll tend to ooze out and get onto things and whatever. It's a little bit messy, but boy, it does a great job. And so this is going to get Gorilla Glued. Now with Gorilla Glue, you put a little bit of moisture on one surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this one dry, and I'm going to spray my hand with some water and just get some moisture on that surface up in there. Okay. And it doesn't need a lot, but it cures with moisture. Okay. And then I'm going to put a bit of glue on here. This stuff will tend to foam up, and so I'm going to put a little bit in that slot right there. Take advantage of that to set a key into things, and then just put a tiny bit on these surfaces up here. When it foams up, it actually gives a very similar sort of density to the foam that you're gluing onto. And so it's really a nice compatible sort of thing when it comes to working with foam. Okay, so I've just got a thin coat over everything there. Okay. Disadvantage of this, it's going to have to get held in place. Okay. So it's not an instant cure by any means. Well, we now want to get our receiver back in. We need to put our little tower sensor cable in there. The top one here is the one for telemetry inputs. In this case, the voltage from the main battery. The bottom one is for a satellite receiver. And I probably mentioned before, a satellite receiver doesn't mean it's using stuff in outer space. It just means that it's got a segment of the receiver that's separate from this one. It might be someplace where you didn't have a lot of electronic gear that has antennas in other places. Okay, so we've got our sensor in there, we've got our Velcro on, this has been glued in nicely. Might mention that given that all of our cables are in the back, it really made no difference as to whether that was down low or not. But it's still a good idea to have it down below this, in that I might put in a 10 channel one day. Let's say I decide to operate all of the servos directly from my radio instead of using that module in there. Then I need more channels, and then I'd have cables going out both sides. So it's still fine to have it the way that we've done it. Okay, we stick it in there, and I'm especially looking at the front of it with regard to making sure that it's straight back. It's kind of hard to tell down inside there, but as I sight down with this edge and the front edge of the receiver, I can quite clearly see whether it's straight or not. Okay, and then I'm giving it a really nice push up against the Velcro to get it really well engaged. Okay, let's get our antennas in place. Okay. here. Okay, now this one I want to hold in place with our Velcro and tape concept. So I've got a Velcro dot sort of thing there with tape on it. Tape is because it's sticky on the back, but I also want it to stick onto the antenna. And what I'm going to do with this, to make it easier to stick it on there, I'm just going to grab a hold of it with the forceps so I can position it well. Okay. So that can help hold it there. And then I just want to make sure that the tape is stuck to the wire down at the bottom, so I'm using the forceps to just stick it a bit. Okay, so we've got our antenna stuck in well there. We got the receiver held in place, the antenna wire's out of the way. Now we're going for the second one. And then for that one, we'll have a little piece of tape across the top. Okay. I'll put that in there like so. Put this in here. And wrap it around. And hold that guy up in there. Okay. Okay, so that's got our antennas nicely out of the way. We've got our voltage probe. What that's going to do is it's going to connect to the red wire on the balance connector, and that will sense our voltage for us. That can get sent back to the transmitter to both display it and potentially have an alarm set if it goes too low. Okay, I didn't check the landing gear. That's one thing I want to do. Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to prop up the back of the model with a block. Okay, and I'm going to hold the front. And now we're all clear. Okay, they work, but they work opposite to what I want. So I'm going to reverse that channel. Okay, so we go into our menu, model, cycle across to the outputs, and in the outputs I want channel 5 as the gear. I edit that and I pick the inverted thing. Yep. And put them down. And that's the excitement of working with something when it's live. Now our balance point is 88 millimeters back from the front of the wing. With this plane, I think it would be fine to balance it right side up, in that you've got a lot of weight down below the wing, so we're treating it like a high wing even though it's a bit above it. So I'm going to measure here, put some marks on here, then we'll be using those. Okay, so I'm going to cut some little pieces of tape that I can use to mark that spot. Little narrow bits. And then positioning them, again with this type of thing, it's good to get a hold of it with tweezers or something like that so you can hold it right where you want it. So it's just in front of where this plastic piece is here, and it looks like if I line this up with the edge of the plastic piece, that's going to be about right. That just helped me to remember, and it is something you can feel a little bit, but it'll be the sort of thing you can look under and you can see. So those will be my markers for where to balance it. So we now put our canopy on. We've got the battery there roughly in the middle, which is kind of what we expect in that we got the middle-sized battery. Time will tell. Okay, now we get underneath here, we're looking for our little thing. And that's certainly pretty close. Let's see if I can get to where I can see the other side better. I got my finger on that one. Finger on this one. Slightly nose heavy. Oh boy, that's really close. Okay. I reckon that's it. Okay, as expected, we got a middle-size. We've got a middle-sized battery, and one would expect that's going to be pretty close to the middle. So I'm going to mark that and say 5,000. So I think we're ready to go. We'll just double check everything, and then I might do a taxi test just to make sure the thing goes nice and straight on the ground. You know, I don't want to be fighting too much with the rudder and that type of thing when I'm taking off. So here at home I'll put it on the driveway and see how straight it goes. Well, thank you for watching. Trust that that was helpful to you, seeing how we've installed the Lemon RX receiver in this beautiful plane. And we'll have some reports for you very soon as to how it flew. Well, in the meantime, make sure that you've subscribed, keep all of these things handy, and have a look at some of our other videos on the site. I'm RC Jim signing off, and you have a great day.